Next up on the broadcast, Alabama Senator Richard Shelby. Senator, it's an honor to have you on Capitol Journal.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here. Senator, you have been a busy guy in Alabama. You have been touring all 67 counties as you do every year, and I think right now you're right in the middle of that annual tour.
That's exactly right. I've spent the last 10, 11 days touring the state, but it takes 2 or 3 months to cover the state.
Yes.
You know, we're nearly 5 million people in 67 counties, but I get a lot out of it. I like to come home. I've had different venues. I've been visiting businesses. I've had breakfast meetings, Dutch and chamber meetings, schools, you name it. But I said, well, what can I do to help you and not harm you? How can government help you and not harm you? Right. Not overtax you, not overregulate. And you'd be surprised at the vibrance of the people in Alabama starting small businesses.
People engaged, interested in what's going on in Washington?
Oh, absolutely, because if you're an individual, and especially if you're a small business person, they realize fast that what we do in Washington affects them in every way. Mm-hmm. Healthcare policy, taxes, regulations of different kinds, the infrastructure or lack thereof, education challenges, all these things affect them every day in their businesses.
Senator, you're now serving your 5th term, and I believe you've already announced that you will seek a 6th, right?
I'm planning to run for re-election, run on my record of service to the people of Alabama and the nation. I still have a lot of energy. Where it comes from, I don't know, maybe my gene pool, but I'm grateful for that. But I've had over 1,800 public meetings of some kind since I've been in the Senate, and I think that has served me well, and it gives the people access to me as one of their U.S. senators. And because the people have kept me there quite a while, it's given me chances that I wouldn't have otherwise. Right now, I'm chairman again of the Senate Banking Committee that affects every man, woman, and child in America and half the world, if not most of the world. It's a challenge, it's tough work, and I also become each day more of a senior member of the Appropriations Committee, which affects the state.
Indeed. I'm curious about the climate in Washington now that Republicans control both chambers of Congress. How do you feel with the new Congress?
Well, it's very competitive. It's polarized still. We have 54 seats. We took control. We have 13 new seats and control of the Senate. But we don't have 60 seats, to just run anything by everybody unless we change the rules like the Democrats did, which we could, and I think we should. Because for the last 3 weeks, the Democrats have been filibustering an appropriation bill dealing with homeland security and immigration. It all comes out of the same bill, where the House put some riders on it, dealing, trying to address some of the president's unilateral actions going bypassing Congress. I think we should vote on those myself. I would vote for that. And they're keeping us from voting on it just like they've done before. I think that we need to change the rules. The leadership, Harry Reid, they did that last year, and they changed the rule on all appointments from 60 votes down to 51, where you can just come up, cut off debate. And they've broken the egg, so to speak. I think that we ought to go ahead and finish the job, because it's a rule, it's not the law.
Right.
It's not in the Constitution. It's just the way we've done business in the past. But I think we have to react to what other people do sometime. If they've done stuff to obstruct what we're trying to do, and we believe what we're trying to do is the right thing, the constitutional thing, I think we have to go within the rules, and we create the rules and we can change them.
Sure. You brought up the president's executive action on immigration, which of course is the subject now of legal wrangling, and that's not totally unexpected, I assume, right?
Oh no, it's been in court. We're going to challenge everything he does that we think is wrong, it's unconstitutional, and we saw the Texas court upheld the other day our side of this. The Obama administration's going to the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals, I think, trying to get a stay, and probably the Supreme Court. But it's a step in the right direction. I hope we can continue that.
You mentioned earlier that you are, again, chairman of the Senate Banking Committee, and I know one of the things you'll be tackling as chairman there, is changes to our financial overhaul law, known as Dodd-Frank, right?
Absolutely. It's something that Dodd-Frank was a sweeping legislation, just, hundreds and hundreds of pages of legislation. I opposed it then. I was the ranking Republican on the committee. I thought we didn't need a lot of that. I know we don't. It's put a big burden on banks, especially small, medium-sized banks, which affect job creation, because a lot of small businesses aren't going to get loans from big banks until they don't need them. Mm-hmm. And I had hearings 2 weeks ago, 2 days on this, how to give relief. I think we're going to give the small, medium-sized banks some relief, because if we don't, it will choke off job creation.
Yeah. When we talk about the financial overhaul law, generally speaking, for the benefit of our viewers, tell us what's at stake here.
Well, what's at stake is overregulation of the economy, overregulation of the banks. If you overregulate the banks, what I want a bank to be well run, to have adequate capital, and not to look for the government for any bailouts.
Right.
I opposed all of that. And our small banks did not cause our financial problem. It was some of our biggest banks that were just basically, running banks in some instances like a casino. And so now you're punishing the small, medium-sized banks, which we shouldn't do. And if you punish them, you're going to punish job creation. Small businesses in America create about 80% of all the jobs. And that's what we want to do, is have a vibrant, our economy's pretty good, but it could get better. And there are a lot of people still looking for work. But we got to think about tomorrow's jobs, then 2 years from now, 3 years from now.
Sure. President Obama laid out some tax plans in his State of the Union address, and I know you've been pretty vocal about your concerns where those taxes were concerned.
Well, I said then that his proposals were dead on arrival. The president each year, and not just this president, just about all the presidents, they make a proposal, and it's all in the media that this is, the Holy Grail, and it goes nowhere. The Democrats wouldn't even support his proposal, and we certainly are not, where there's a lot of taxes involved. He also was going to tax, you recall several weeks ago, the proposal was to tax savings account for education, middle-class people working hard to try to educate their children. He caused such an uproar, a lot of them spoke out against this as an attack on the middle class. He backed away already. I think that we've got to look at the tax code. We should do it, not to raise people's taxes, individuals, but to see if we can have fundamental tax reform, because there are a lot of, when 50% of the people in America are paying no income tax, nothing, and when 5% of the people are paying 74, 75%, something's wrong with our tax code. We need to look at our tax code and reward people with incentives to grow businesses, to invest, and everything else, rather than just create a big government and handouts.
Mm-hmm. The Keystone XL pipeline has been a hot button topic in Washington. Where do you stand?
It would create jobs immediately. It would create a lot of jobs that are basically Democrats in their orientation, thousands of jobs, but it would help our energy. The more chances we have to deliver energy to our refineries, and we've got a lot of oil we found in North Dakota and elsewhere, fracking and so forth. And look at Canada. The more we have, the lower the gas prices. It's supply and demand. It's a win-win, but I don't think he understands it. If he vetoes it, we're going to try to override it. We're going to need some Democrats to override in the House and the Senate. I hope we will, but this will not be the end of that. Sooner or later, we're going to build that pipeline.
We have a new Defense Secretary, Ashton Carter. Did you support his?
I did. I voted for him. I think he's a very smart man. I hope he will be able to be independent at the Pentagon. I'm not sure he will be, but he's got independent views because the White House has been, and the Obama administration has been trying to run the Secretary of State's office, the Secretary of Defense, and other things from the White House. And if they do this, then you relegate the Secretary to just answering to them. I hope that they will not do this, because we're challenged around the world. You got a resurgent Russia. You got a building of a huge economic colossus in China. We have explosive Middle East. This is no time to have anybody that's not pro-defense, pro-national security, and make sure that we're second to none.
Ash Carter has made headlines in recent days by saying that he supports slowing down our troop withdrawal from Afghanistan. What do you think?
I think that's right. I think ultimately we never intended to go there in perpetuity. I thought we maybe rushed to judgment too fast to withdraw, because once we withdraw, there will be a vacuum. Somebody will fill that vacuum. Will it be the Taliban, Al Qaeda? Will it be somebody that's halfway friendly to us?
The growing threat of the Islamic State, as it's called, or ISIS, it's a huge debate now on how the U.S. should respond, or if we should respond. There's a lot of talk of maybe arming some of the resistance and helping them versus putting more American troops on the ground in the Middle East. How do you feel?
I think we should be very wary of sending our troops back there. They've been there before. I've supported it all. We spent $2 trillion. And we lost a lot of lives, and we wounded a lot of our soldiers. I mean, the question is, at the end of the day, 10 years later, was it a success? We'd have to say no.
At the same time, there's a huge refugee problem, especially in Syria. And there's been some talk of allowing Syrian refugees to come to the United States. That sparked, as I say, a pretty loud and vigorous debate here in the homeland. Some have gone so far as to raise concerns about radicalization of these refugees once they come to America. Is that a threat?
I think it's a real concern, because you start bringing, thousands and thousands of refugees out of the Middle East. You don't know how many are hidden cells in there that would be terrorists against us and also do us harm down the road. I think we have to be careful on immigration, who we bring into this country. We have not always done that.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned Russia earlier. Of course, the problems between Russia and Ukraine. There have been efforts by some of our allies in Europe to negotiate a truce, a ceasefire, if you will. It's been a rocky road, has it not?
It has been, and I think that we have to look at Putin realistically. Putin is reasserting his strength in Russia. He wants Russia to become dominant and reclaim a lot of territory they've lost. That's obvious. And no one's standing up to him. The Ukrainians are not armed well enough to stand up to him. It's a question, will Germany and will France, and the nations of Europe, which together are very powerful, stand up to him? You can't be afraid of him. He's got a tottering economy. His economy is basically built off of oil and gas, and the prices are way down. Everything's not well in Russia, but we should seek peace, but we should not run, and we should not let our allies just back away.
It's a delicate balancing act, don't you think? Because it behooves us to have a healthy Russian economy, but there are many signs that the Russian economy is suffering in light of its aggression in Ukraine.
It is. The sanctions are hurting them, and that's what they were intended for. As a matter of fact, if Putin doesn't move back and try to be peaceful, not only say it but do it, I think we should push sanctions very strongly, much more. But we got to have Europe behind us.
I know I'm jumping around a lot, but I wanted to get your take on a lot of things while you're here. The provision that would allow Native Americans to grow marijuana on tribal lands has reared its head in Alabama because the Porch Band of Creek Indians is interested in expanding its casino operations to Northwest Florida and has threatened, to start growing marijuana as sort of a bargaining chip with the Florida officials to give them leeway to, expand casinos.
I think it's wrong. I've always thought we were one nation, indivisible. Yet we have the tribal areas that they claim that they're a nation and they have certain rights that other people don't have. And the courts up to now have upheld them all the way to the Supreme Court. It makes no sense to me. It looks to me like we ought to have laws for everybody, including if they're in Alabama, they ought to go by our laws.
We're about to mark a very important anniversary here in Alabama, the 50th anniversary of the Bloody Sunday Voting Rights March from Selma to Montgomery, and the eyes of the nation and really the eyes of the world in many respects will be back on Alabama again.
Well, that was part of our history. I lived through it. I was in Alabama. I was a young man, and we look back now and said, gosh, why did we let that happen? You know, was that necessary? It did happen, and they're commemorating. We've come a long way in 50 years.
Indeed. At the same time, there are some who are contending that we have taken a few steps back with some of the changes that have been made to the Voting Rights Act in the last year or two. Do you see it that way?
No, I don't. I don't at all. I don't think so at all. I think this. I think that we ought to encourage every American to vote, you know, when they become of age and so forth, and got the qualifications, which are minimal, really. And we ought to make it easy for them to vote, and we've done that. Beyond that, we shouldn't do anything to keep them from voting.
Finally, Senator, as you continue your tour of all the 67 counties in Alabama, I'm sure you've heard a lot from constituents about the perceived dysfunction in Congress in Washington. Do you see an easing of that dysfunction?
Well, I have. A lot of people want us to go along, get along. Other people say, why can't we get along? Why can't we do this? We have a divide in our philosophy, and it is polarized. Maybe we can reach some agreements on things, but I think this president, and honestly, in this administration, is polarizing itself. It's polarized America.
Maybe in coming forth with ideas that he knows won't pass muster in Congress, but just, you know, putting them out there as sort of a lame duck president?
Yeah, he's a lame duck president. He knows that. All presidents are, you know, once they get reelected. And he's got about less than 2 years left in the term. But he's still the president of the United States, and he could do some good things. He could work with us. He could work with the Republicans, but he'd have to want to do it.
You think he might want to?
I doubt it.
You don't think so?
I don't know.
The proof will be in the pudding, right?
Absolutely.
Alabama Senator Richard Shelby, it was an honor to have you on the
Thank you.
program.
Thank
you
you
for being here
Thank
today.
you.
And Capital Journal, we'll be right back.